This episode of Main Street Moxie is proudly sponsored by Northeast Ford and Elise Harney Real Estate. Mary, happy Moxie Monday. How are you doing today?
I am doing very well. We have a great guest today.
A friend of yours, an old friend.
An old friend, but that's not the reason why he's on this podcast.
Oh, no? We're not bringing our friends on here?
The reason he's on this podcast, and his name is Leo Marzen.
Uh-huh.
He is the managing director of Bridgewater Advisors, which is a financial management advisory firm.
Okay.
So I've known Leo since he was an accounting major. We both were accounting majors at the University of Scranton.
Okay.
And he loves accounting. He loves financial stuff.
Yeah.
And he's also an amazing human being with a lot of integrity. He's very earnest. I find him to be one of the most trustworthy people that I've ever met. Mm-hmm. And I thought it would be important for him to talk about how financial planning can intersect with being a platform for Moxie.
Okay.
And also how his own brand of Moxie was cultivated from his childhood and his family's ownership of Marzen Hardware, which is in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. So for those reasons, I thought he was a great candidate for Main Street Moxie.
Well, he certainly sounds like our kind of people. So let's dive in. Elise Harney Real Estate is the #1 real estate agency for the tri-state region, and they provide a comprehensive overview of the regional market spanning Litchfield, Dutchess, Columbia, and Berkshire counties.
Elise Harney Real Estate serves 40 unique communities with 35 years of experience. They have a team of knowledgeable real estate professionals to work with you to buy or sell your house.
Their offices are located in Salisbury, Millerton, Norfolk, Falls Village, and Riverton, or you can visit them online at www.harneyrealestate.com.
So Leo, welcome to Main Street Moxie. We're really happy to have you here today.
Thank you. Glad to be part of it.
Well, I gave you a little spoiler that the first question we always ask is, how do you define Moxie?
I guess I would say Moxie is having a certain swagger to your persona, but I think it's really all grounded in self-confidence. I think you need to, knowing what your abilities are, you always try to stretch yourself a little bit, but ultimately I think it comes down to self-confidence. So given that definition, how have you seen that definition working in your own life over the course of your career or your personal life? I guess it's a willingness to take some risks, sort of calculated risks. You always have to ask yourself, if I fall flat on my face, what's the worst that can happen? You know, are people going to disown me, or am I still going to have friends at the end of it? But I think it's a matter of knowing what your abilities are and then trying to stretch those, push it, try to be a better person, and take some risks. Some are going to work out, some aren't. And you've done that. You, according to your bio, I'm going to read it word for word. When Leo couldn't find the right investment advisory firm to join, he started his own. Mm-hmm. So I remember, we've been friends since college. I remember you starting out and coming from a small town in Pennsylvania and making your mark. What were you thinking? I guess it didn't seem maybe as scary at the time, but I think, some of that is true. I did have a passion for doing what is now today in this world called financial planning or wealth management. And back then, this is the late 80s, early 90s, the firm that we have now, firms like ours didn't really exist. But I knew of a few other small firms that were very more entrepreneurial that were doing this. the barriers to entry to our profession were a lot lower at that point. And I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I was unattached. I was renting. So I felt like as long as I can pay my rent, put some food on the table, that I would figure it out as I go. So I thought, yes, they were risks, but I thought the risks were things that I could handle, and if I failed, I wasn't drawing anyone else into it. I didn't have anyone else that was dependent upon me. So that was the calculus, but certainly didn't know where all of this was going to lead.
Was it just you when you started out, or did you have employees or partner?
It was just me. So that was the other thing. Again, I didn't have anyone else to worry about. And I did this probably for about a year, and just try to make progress. Even every month, did every month get a little bit better, and fortunately, it did. And then really a seismic thing happened, and that is my path crossed with another gentleman who was also doing the same thing. He didn't like the way financial advice was being disseminated back then, and was starting his own firm. He was a whole generation older than me, so his progression was a little bit swifter than mine, but he was looking to do this with someone else. He never wanted to be a one-person operation. And I guess serendipitously, our paths crossed. It was wonderful for me because he had a completely different background than I did. He had a lot of street smarts. I learned from him, and we just made a good team. We were actually two very different people, but we had very similar views on what it meant to provide client service, do the right thing, provide independent and objective advice, and sort of everything else sort of fell into place after that. And then so that was really sort of the genesis of our firm, Bridgewater Advisors. And then the two of us were fortunate enough to find other like-minded people along our journey who had a similar passion for what we did. And we got great people. Most of our folks stay for a very long time. And so a stable firm tends to lead to a stable client base.
So when you say people weren't doing what you're doing, are you talking about the way in which you do what you do? And can you explain that a little bit? The independent fee only advice, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. So back in the 80s, if somebody had money to invest, they typically went to a broker. There can be good brokers and bad brokers, but it was a different model. Basically, everything was on a commission basis. So the broker would get paid based on a transaction. Typically, it was more transaction oriented and less consultative or collaborative. So it was transaction oriented. Because there was a lack of technology at that point, there was a bit of a mystery surrounding investing. It was rather opaque. There wasn't nearly the transparency that there is today. And you went to your broker if you wanted investment advice. You had your accountant if you wanted tax advice. You had maybe an insurance agent if you needed insurance. You had an attorney for estate planning issues. And so it was very segmented at that time. The whole concept of investment advisory, financial advisory, if you will, is to take a lot of those disciplines and bring them under one roof. And sometimes, it's hard to be expert in all of those different areas. So it's important that one knows what their limitations are. But to us, the whole concept for what our firm stands for now is really what we call comprehensive wealth management, where clients come to us for help with how to invest money. Do they have the right insurance coverages? Although we don't sell insurance, we provide rather, I think, insightful tax planning and even preparation. And we're not attorneys, so we don't draft documents, but we go pretty deep into the process of helping one think about estate planning issues and gifting and transitional wealth. And because of technology, and we can bring all this information together under one roof, we don't we don't work on a transactional basis. We work on a fee-only basis. So our clients pay us a fee upfront, or not upfront, but it's on as you go. But they know very clearly, it's very transparent. They know exactly what our level of compensation is and how we get paid. And we're basically giving them the tools to decide, is this a fair arrangement for them? There's no longer any mystery about, why are they recommending this? Are they making more on this piece of advice versus another piece of advice? And so we just felt that this was a better way to deliver financial advice. I think we felt it was fairer, more transparent, it's more collaborative, and it just leads to stickier relationships going forward.
We're going to get into some hard questions now. We've warmed you up with some softball questions. How do you think financial planning and having a firm financial basis can help people take the calculated risks to exercise Moxie in some other area of their life?
I think part of our job is connecting the money or the wealth that they have to what their life plans are, their goals, and helping them fulfill the promises that they've made in their life to other people, to their loved ones, to other people that are important. And so money is really just a means to the end. We will gladly talk about, how their investments are doing relative to the market. But more importantly, it's a matter of helping them understand what this wealth, how this fits into their future plans. Are they on target? Do they need to work a little bit longer? Maybe they can retire now and never thought about that. So it's helping them understand other financial issues that they have. I think really going back to your question about how can financial security promote their own Moxie, I think what we have found is that clients who have a better sense of their own wealth and how it fits into their life are happier. They're less anxious when the markets go up and down. They know that this will happen from time to time and that we have already thought about this in our planning. And it just hopefully takes one less worry away from them so that they can go out and enjoy their life and maybe take their own risks that they weren't comfortable taking before.
I'm just going to say it. I think you told me once that you have some philosophers on your team.
Mm-hmm. Do.
So your view of wealth, to me, harkens back to an ancient Greek view that Plato espouses in his writings about money as a means to do something, not just to accumulate it for its own sake. And I'm wondering, how do you define wealth for yourself, for your clients? Is it purely monetary, or is there some other calculus going into there?
One, we do have our co-chief investment officer has a doctorate in philosophy, and that has come in handy more than once. Again, I think the wealth is a means to an end. People have all different views as to what they would like to accomplish in life. Maybe there's immense charitable intent. Maybe there's a real tug to help certain organizations or missions succeed. For some, it may all be about family. For others, it may be wanting to possessions. We don't make those value judgments when we work with clients, but we do try to understand at the beginning of a relationship what is their motivation. And I think to the extent that we can help them satisfy some of their motivational goals, then that's really what our role is as a financial advisor.
Do your clients have to have kind of that goal in mind before they come to you, or is that something you formulate with them?
Some clearly come with that goal. Others do not. It's a collaborative approach. Sometimes they may, at the beginning of a relationship, they may not have formulated the goals themselves, but hopefully over time, as we work together, we're doing the right job of questioning them so that they can have a better sense as to what all this wealth means for them.
When I teach students a philosophy of happiness class, we focus a lot on the present moment, and that being the only moment that one can control. The future lies in imagination, the past lies in memory, the present lies in consciousness. And you are very focused on people's long-term goals and are fully aware of the vicissitudes of the market. Mm-hmm. So how do you balance the present with the future, the illusion of control with what you can actually control? How do you help clients understand those tensions?
I guess we look at it from a risk perspective. We have an expectation that certain. Let's look at it just from an investment standpoint. Historically, certain investments have reacted in a particular way. Every now and then we get surprised, but I guess we're trying just to put the law of averages to our clients' benefit. And that doesn't always work out. This year is a wonderful example of that, without digging too deep into investment lexicon. You have stocks and bonds, and typically they are looked upon as offsets to each other. Stocks for long-term growth, bonds for stability and some income. Well, because of what's going on in the marketplace right now, bonds are poor, and stocks are even worse. There is no offset. They're highly correlated with each other. And that can be very unsettling for clients, because this is something that they probably haven't experienced in their adult lifetime. It's probably been about 40 years since you've had such a dramatic drawdown of both of these asset classes together. So you're right. You can only live in the present. We talk about future. I think what we will also do there is to try to remind clients that these are not permanent conditions, that the sun will shine again. The markets are not just some playground or a casino, that there's a common thing that says it's not a stock market, it's a market of stocks. These are actually real companies that people are investing in. And unless you think that every public company out there is going to go bankrupt, there is value, and that value will be realized over time. It's dealing with uncertainty. Try to put some guardrails around what might be the best and worst case scenario, and then make periodic adjustments along the way. It's, if you're sailing to France, you don't just set it on one course and never look at it again. If you make these modest adjustments along the way, it's going to be a much more efficient ride.
I want to talk about some financial literacy. When I was working at the high school where I was doing the career program, I did have some financial literacy elements to that. And trying to get students to understand the difference between putting money in a bank account and how you actually generate wealth through investing in something, whether it's stocks or real estate or a business. How do you explain that to people? How do you make that aha moment real for your wealth means letting your money work for you?
If we need to, we go back to some of the very basics to understand what each of these underlying assets are designed to do. Typically, stocks represent ownership. They represent ownership in a company or an asset that is expected to grow over time. And frankly, it's really the only asset, stocks, public traded stocks, or even private companies, real estate, that has typically generated real wealth over time. And by what I mean by real is above inflation. So if inflation is 3% a year and you put money into an investment, and all it's going to do is generate a return of 3% a year, you're not really generating any real wealth. You're not increasing your purchasing power. So I think it's an understanding of the spectrum of all the different investments that you can invest in, and looking at what their expectation is. You can put money into a CD, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But a CD from a bank is not going to generate real wealth, because all it's really designed to do is keep your money safe and give you a return that is commensurate with the cost of living, inflation every year. So that's fine. Some people say, well, I'm invested, I have money in CDs. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, this year it actually is probably one of the best investments out there because it hasn't lost money. But if you expect that to be your worst outcome, you also have to expect that to be your best outcome. And so you're really not going to be making any headway generating wealth over time. To me, it's just looking at the experiences of these different asset classes and knowing that you're not going to hit that every year or maybe even every few years, but over longer time periods, there's enough volume of information now to have a reasonably high level of certainty, a high probability that if you invest this way in higher risk stuff, you're going to end up with higher returns.
So does that require some moxie and courage to invest in higher risk things?
Oh, it certainly does. And I think that, then you have to determine, well, what is still prudent? It's not just because you're doing something high risk, then the probability, it may be high return, but the probability may be very low.
Right.
And so that's when we come down to this whole investment concept of diversification. And that since there are no guarantees, you can't put all your eggs in one basket and you have to diversify properly. But if you diversify properly, even amongst a lot of high risk things, chances are that sometimes you only need one or two of those to come through. That's not the way we would advocate recommending for the general population to have all your money in stocks. But even within stocks, there's no certainty. So broad diversification is a critical element of that.
Do you usually advise, that your clients invest for 10 years, 15 years, or, of course it's cyclical. And of course we know the market is up and down. I mean, 2008, most of us remember that and lived through that, but you said the stock and bond market hasn't been like this in 40 years. So that brings us back to the 70s and the gas crisis. Then is there a clear cycle that you find, and therefore should your clients invest for a certain time?
Obviously longer is better.
Mm-hmm.
In most 10-year periods, investors would have fared well by investing in stocks, but there are 10-year periods. Sometimes they refer to as the lost decade, where you didn't make any money. In fact, 2008 is a perfect example. If you look at the time period, if one had invested in 1998, they would have lost money by 2008. There were some very nice highs in between, but that was considered a lost decade for some clients. And so you can't just look at that and say, see, I told you there's no investing in stocks doesn't make sense. You have to sort of pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and take a look at the longer term picture. And the years following 2008 were absolutely wonderful. Probably had close to about a 10-year period where there were no negative years. And so if you had the moxie to stick with it appropriately, you would have done just fine, and you would have been able to realize the long-term investment potential of stocks. But because you can have these periods that show up, that's why it doesn't make sense to have 100% of your money in stocks all the time.
Are you also a student of history? Going back 40 years, you were probably following the stock market 40 years ago, even earlier.
Hello. I like to think I'm a student of history, and particularly financial history. There is a certain rhythm. The markets tend to overshoot. The markets always get too euphoric when times are good, and the markets go down too much when times are bad. And you have to try to truncate those excesses out. And most of the times, the markets never get to those extremes, but sometimes they do. And you can't. I think the big thing is you have to have the moxie not to panic and put some trust in the long-term plan. Even with all that said, there are still no guarantees. Show me where there's a guarantee in life. There isn't. And so sometimes you have to make some short-term adjustments along the way.
Northeast Ford offers great sales and service, including a no-charge pickup and delivery for any service, even with oil changes. And they offer 2-year unlimited oil changes with any vehicle purchase, new or pre-owned.
Northeast Ford makes buying, selling, or trading in your car super easy. They have charging stations for your electric vehicle and a ready cash now offer and vehicle check on the spot if you wish to sell your vehicle. And they provide help with all the paperwork.
They service 6 counties, and they are located at 182 Route 44 in Millerton, where you can swing by and see Lan and his great sales team.
Or visit them online at www.northeastfordmillerton.com. We're going to go back in time.
Okay. hopefully not too far, but go ahead.
No, way back to your childhood.
Okay.
In Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, with your parents and your family at Marzen's Hardware, which is still in existence.
Still chugging along.
5-star rating on Google. I looked it up.
Okay.
And I feel like you've always been, because I've known you since 1981. Where you were as far as I'm concerned, the University of Scranton did not realize the poster child for accounting that they had in you. I was telling Thorin, the prospect of double entry made you positively giddy. And that you held such joy for the profession, for a balance sheet, for an income statement, for anything to do with numbers and symmetry. And I look at the life that you've built with your professional life and your family, and I feel like I have to go right back to Connie and Bob. That your rootedness in place, wherever you settle, you're rooted, you contribute. And I just want to take a moment and ask you to explore those lessons that you've carried forward of integrity and honesty and transparency and even the small town hardware shop kind of model that you've built at Bridgewater. You've got everything there that someone could need. So I just wanted you to muse on that a little bit if you care to. And you have to, because we have time to fill.
That's right. I'm always glad to talk about what is near and dear to my heart, which is family, certainly my parents, and this little old hardware store that keeps chugging along. I mean, I learned more in that experience than I ever could in college. There's been 2 owners of this store in the last 126 years.
Wow.
So it was started back in the late 1800s. A gentleman ran it till 1951 when my father took it over. And then he had it. I'm the youngest of 6, 3 boys, 3 girls. We lived right next to the store. And my father was always around. He worked incredibly hard, but he was always there. There's a little thin door that separates the main area of the store where people check out, where the cash register is, and our kitchen table. And so it's not unusual to have, having a lunch or so and then being called over to cut keys or mix paint. It goes back to sort of this whole thing about the greatest generation. Boy, they really worked hard. They had their values were strong and clear. I learned so much from my father and my 2 brothers working in the store about just the operations of a business. My father also kept his own books, so he did his own accounting. And I think when he even saw that I had a little glimmer of interest, I could see, his eyes sparkle, and he really to help foster this. But in these small businesses, you do everything. So yes, right. You keep the books, it's the operations, it's the client customer service and experience. All of those were just invaluable skills that I learned. And so I think even when I was going through the business program and accounting program at Scranton, and then I went to work for one of the big accounting firms in New York, I always knew that I had to have my own business, or at least a small, a business with 1 or 2, other folks. I was not cut out for the big corporate environment. And so, I don't know, all of these things, you're right, Mary, I just learned these just by being present. And I wouldn't change it for the world. It was, it's been a wonderful experience.
If I could liken you to one of two characters from the Christmas Carol.
Uh-oh.
We have Scrooge
okay.
and we have Fezziwig.
Okay.
And even though you're physically don't resemble Fezziwig,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's more of the ethos and the culture that you strive for in your business. So I'm wondering if you could talk about, you mentioned that people come to work and stay. What
Mm-hmm.
is it about the way you built and run Bridgewater that makes people want to stick around? It's not your corny sense of humor. It's got to be something else.
No, that has faded over time. I think it's empowering our colleagues. We have a very flat organization. Everyone has the opportunity to contribute. Everyone's voice is important. And I think it's allowing our colleagues. First of all, we have no employees. We only have colleagues. It's allowing our colleagues to take ownership over what we expect them to do. And if they have an idea that can help the process, we want to know about it. I think it all starts in the hiring process, trying to find good people that we think also have good values. Integrity is of utmost importance in our firm, but also in our industry. We have absolutely nothing to sell our clients. We don't manufacture anything. We don't have a product. The only thing that we have to offer them is our advice. And our advice is only valuable to the extent that our clients continue to trust it and have confidence that we're doing the right things for them. And that transcends throughout our organization. So it's trying to find colleagues who have that same ethos. We work hard. We've probably always been understaffed throughout our entire history, but our colleagues have always seem to step up to the plate. So we work hard, but we also have freedom. We have very few employee colleague rules. It's show up. If you need time off, fine. Take time off. We recognize that it's important for everyone to have a work-life balance. I think that's the other part of it. We want people to be engaged and work hard for our clients when they're there, but everyone else has another outside life. They have spouses, children, and parents that are important to them. And when they need to focus more attention on that, that's just fine. They need to take extra time off. We don't hover over them and track them down. To say what are you doing now? Why weren't you here at 9 o'clock? That doesn't work. I think it really all boils down to treating people as professionals and giving them the leeway to accomplish their work in a manner that feels comfortable to them.
It sounds kind of like how you describe running the hardware store, where it's very much a family-run operation where, everyone chimes in and steps up to the plate.
I think it's very empowering when others feel that they're part of a team and they have an obligation to not let that team down.
Right.
So we're constantly, if something needs to be done for the firm, say, and it may not be very glorious, but it's like, we need this to happen. My goodness, people are constantly volunteering and raising their hand and stepping in and say, oh, you know what, I'll do that. I'll monitor the phones the day after Thanksgiving and make sure that, clients get can talk to a live person. It really is wonderful. And I think it's a virtuous cycle. And when they see others step up and do something for the good of the firm and our clients, then others are willing to step up as well.
What do you think your colleagues would say about you if they were on
Oh boy.
this
Oh
call?
boy. Well, I'm glad they're not. I don't know. I guess I would hope that they would say that I'm fair, I'm respectful, and I'm trying to find the good in all of them to try to make them and all of us, better people. You have to enjoy what you do in life. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable. And, as you get older and you get more seasoned in your own career, other younger folks, college students, have lots of college students who inquire about, job opportunities or career advice and try to get them positioned in the right way. But I think perhaps the most important thing is find out what you enjoy doing and do it well, and you will be successful as however you define success. Money, if it, money will come, or money will find its place over time. But figure out when when the alarm goes off in the morning, do you feel good about the day? Do you look forward to it? Not every day is going to be perfect, but you better enjoy what you do for a career, because if not, you're going to be miserable, and that miserableness is just going to manifest itself in so many other aspects of your life and the relationships that you carry. So find your passion. That's not, I didn't invent that. That's a pretty common theme out there.
Really? I was telling Thorin that one of the things that I admire about you is that you have this childlike, not childish, childlike joy about life and a real curiosity about people. And I think those skills, traits, I guess they're more traits. How do you keep those alive in you? What kind of practices do you have that keep you kind of coming back and feeling that way about life, about people? Is it yoga?
No, it's not yoga. There are no exercises. I'm probably most similar to my father in that way. Look, he was a very principled man. He enjoyed life. He was funny. He had a wonderful wit. I think people enjoyed being around him. And I guess those are traits that hopefully I've inherited some of those. You know what? Don't take yourself too seriously. I've been given some wonderful gifts. I hope I'm using them properly, but it can all be taken away pretty quickly. And so, enjoy what you have, enjoy others that are around you. I will say the joyousness sometimes changes. So when I was in, Mary, you knew me in college, and other than maybe a test coming up, we didn't have a lot of worries. We really,
Except the Mets.
Except the Mets. Yes, that's weighing on me right now. But as you get older and more people, and you realize that there are more people that you're responsible for, more people dependent. I've noticed myself, I've gotten a little more serious in my life. I still like to joke and have fun and enjoy, have a nice weekend with friends and colleagues and all of that stuff. But sometimes just the pressure of what you're trying to do does seep into your everyday. And I try to catch myself and say, Leo, you should have, I don't know, you could have made light of that in a different way, or made it a little more joyous for those around you. So maybe there's a greater awareness of this, but don't take yourself too seriously. Life's too short.
What would you say to people? We always ask everyone about setbacks, or, if something doesn't work out or it just fails. How would you tell people to approach that from your perspective, from the work that you do and for your clients?
I guess maybe my kids come to mind at first, and try to teaching lessons. I don't know. I'm a big believer in that great British philosopher, Mick Jagger, who said, you don't always get what you want, but you always get what you need. I think that's true. I think that's true.
Yeah.
Got to put it in perspective. Why is this happening? well, step back, and sometimes, in hindsight, may actually been what you needed at the time. And I'm a very firm believer in, what doesn't kill you kills you, makes you stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Life works out over time. You just have to let it. And more often than not, that has kept me grounded and worked in my favor. Can't get too uptight about some of the little setbacks that happen.
Mm. So we're at that final moment, Leo.
Mm-hmm.
You've given a lot of advice, but now we got to crystallize it. What would you advise somebody to move their own Moxie needle, whether it's financially or personally, just one little click? What would you say to them?
I guess I would say I see how quickly life moves. Sort of at the end of my career, not the beginning of it. It's like, what happened? Life goes by pretty quickly. I guess I would say, don't be afraid to take risks. Not saying be reckless. Mm. And I have very few regrets in life. I really do. But there are things you look back and you say, boy, I wish I wonder what would have happened if I said yes to that offer to do something. Get involved, take risk. Good things typically come of it.
Amen.
And then I think you do have to ask yourself, what if I fail? Really, what is the worst that can happen? What's the worst outcome?
Is there a hardware store in your future?
But boy, it is something that is still near and dear to my heart, because I realize all the wonderful and valuable lessons that I've been able to take from it.
Well, Leo, thank you so much for joining us today on Main Street Moxie.
Thank you so much. It was so fun.
You're welcome. Thank you. I even learned a little bit about myself. Thank you very much.
So, Thorin, what'd you think of Leo?
I had so much fun talking with him. He radiates good person and doing good things. And I think my favorite part of that was actually his Mick Jagger quote.
Which was?
Now you put me on the spot. No, I mean,
you get what you need.
Exactly. But I think it goes, very much with what he was talking about overall, and his whole philosophy and approach to life, as well as in his, business and for his clients. So much of what he said is also the core values that I have. And I think that I really saw and connected with that in his approach to life. That's kind of one of the things that stood out most for me. And it doesn't matter, for him, even though we were talking about his business and advice, that he gives financially and otherwise, but it's really about a life approach. And for me, it's being a good person, doing good things, and his whole spiel about not being miserable. I think that's very valuable, because I think a lot of people forget about that and get stuck, and they don't know how. They're just swimming in their own misery, as he was kind of saying. And he's like, don't be miserable. Life is too short. Find what makes you happy and do that, and you will succeed. I think that's a very strong message and important to constantly remind ourselves.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I really enjoyed listening to his leadership model,
yes,
which is highly collaborative and empowering. And I think when people feel like they've got skin in the game, and that you're going to roll up your sleeves like they are, it makes them want to do good things and follow you. And I love the fact that he's a long-term person.
Yes.
He sinks in his teeth and he commits, for whether it's in the community or institutions or his own company, his family. He's a committed person. So yeah, it was a good one.
I had a lot of fun. I think I feel the glow, the Leo glow is still around us.
Yes, yeah. And I'm going to go home and take a look at my diversification.
Actually, that's a good idea. I think I'll head right over to my Fidelity account right now.
All right, Thorin. See you next time.
See ya.
This episode of Main Street Moxie is proudly sponsored by Northeast Ford and Elise Harney Real Estate.